What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Southeast Sports Talk. I am your host, joined along with my co-host tonight, Mr. Wade. How you doing? And I bet you are excited for some Week 1 action in the Southeastern Conference.
I am. Let's dive right in. It's feels like Christmas Eve. We got
Yes.
college football right on the horizon, starting tomorrow night. So I know we had a few week 0 games, if you want to call them that, this past weekend, but we're going to see every team in action starting tomorrow. Some games on Friday, even some Sunday games with LSU playing on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a busy slate for you. We'll have a couple of games to talk about. We'll obviously recap Week 0 with Vanderbilt and Hawaii. But before we get into that, let's dive into the SEC teams in the AP Top 25 poll. There was only one game in the SEC, so the poll that you saw on last week's show did not change whatsoever. You still have number 1, Alabama. They'll get underway this weekend along with all these other SEC schools. Number 3 is Georgia. Number 6 is Texas A&M. Number 19 is the Arkansas Razorbacks. Number 20 is Kentucky. And rounding out the top 25 poll for the SEC is number 21. Just a quick rundown. It will change every week from now on as all these schools will get underway. So next, we'll get into our reminder segment here. We're happy to be a part of Old City Sports Network. If you have any questions, pertaining to SEC football, or we'll take any questions outside of the conference as well. I'm sure we have a lot of football fans joining us tonight. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave us a comment, and then we will get to that at the end of this show when we have our answering questions segment. All right, now let's kick it off with SEC Fantasy is back, and it is presented by Sports Scramble Podcast. You can find our other show here on the Sports Scramble Podcast. We have our Twitter. You can follow them at Sports Scramble 4 or wherever you listen to our podcasts. We usually record those on Sunday nights. Obviously, with the LSU game being on Sunday, that'll be on Monday, and then it usually comes out on Tuesday. So you can find that there. So let's dive into SEC Fantasy here. But first, let's get into the rules. We might have some new listeners joining us, and then obviously our old listeners as well. So going over the rules, you get one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and one defense. So we kind of work things here like if we've been drafting a lot of fantasy football, we kind of work like that around here. And then we do have a rule that we implemented last year. Wade and I thought this was a really good rule to really put down is we cannot pick the same player back-to-back weeks. So, for example, we can't pick Bryce Young in week 1 and week 2. We just try to do that to get some more players because there's a lot of them in the SEC, and we love all the SEC athletes. So we want to give them the spotlight as much as we can. So with that being said, I gave my co-host the honors of having the number 1 overall pick in SEC Fantasy. So we'll go to the quarterbacks, and you're going right back home to South Carolina with your pick.
I am, and as you see, this guy's still wearing his practice jersey. Spencer Rattler, he's fresh to the SEC. Entered this time last year with Heisman aspirations. Didn't quite go to plan. He found his way to second string at Oklahoma. But Shane Beamer convinced him to come down to Columbia, South Carolina. And I think it's going to be a good move for him and for the Gamecocks. So I see him getting off to a good start against Georgia State. I don't think that should be much of an issue for him. I think he should have a good day through the air. One other thing just about SEC Fantasy, if you're just joining us, it is all based on yards. So yes. Touchdowns don't factor into this. Rushing yards by quarterbacks don't factor in. It's quarterbacks get passing yards, running backs get rushing yards, and receivers get receiving yards. And so it's all about guys who can air it out, and these are two guys that can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It would just get too complicated if we went like an ESPN way of like half PPR and all that. We just keep it simple here, the yards. And just a reminder for the defense is negative yardage. So say Kentucky's defense gives up 150 or whatever points of offense, you negate that with the defense. So I'm going to go with Will Rogers. I mean, it's the air raid offense, and they were playing the Memphis Tiger team that really had a nice game plan last year against them, but this year they get them back at home. They have that revenge factor. They have a bad taste in their mouth the last time that these two faced off. So I'm not really worried about the rule that we have in place with no back-to-back weeks. I know that Mississippi State has a road trip to Tucson against Arizona. That's a team that's been struggling the past year or so. But I got to trust Will Rogers. I know that you, Spencer Rattler, that's going to be a risky pick. They do have Georgia State. That's going to be a scrappy ball club. But I could see Rattler and Rogers really line up the scoreboard in week 1. So on to the passers and now on to the running backs. We'll go to you for this one. This is a new face as Chris Rodriguez will be out for Kentucky season opener.
Exactly. So C-Rod's out. Enter his replacement, Cavazier Smoke. He's been on Kentucky, I think, for 2 or 3 years now. He's very explosive. I watched him run all up and down the field against LSU a year ago. So he's capable, and he'll be eager to get the first crack at it for Kentucky. I mean, if he gets off to a strong start, we might see a little bit more of a 2-back system there to keep Rodriguez fresh. And I think Smoke probably goes for 100 yards in this season opener. They're playing Miami of Ohio, which is a decent team from the MAC, but Kentucky should win this game.
Yeah, Miami of Ohio made a MAC championship appearance last year, so there's really no slouch. But I think Smoke is a very good pick, especially with Chris Rodriguez Jr. We know that Will Levis is the quarterback, but we know Kentucky's bread and butter is to really pound the rock after you. So that is definitely a great pick for you. And I'm going to go with another SEC opponent. This is a team that I'm really high on going into 2022 is Jabari Small, Tennessee running back. He's bringing that veteran presence. I know that they have Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman there. This is a team that's also facing a MAC school in Ball State. So we're pretty much beating up on the MAC schools here, picking these 2 running backs. But I think that Smoke and Small is pretty much a lock to go over 100 yards for this weekend. All right, let's go on to the pass catchers. And we have a new face here, the Oklahoma transfer for your side.
We do. Jaden Hazelwood. He's established himself as one of the better wide receivers in college football. Previously at Oklahoma, Oklahoma is a very high-powered offense. It's a good system to be a wide receiver in, but he's more of a physical receiver than a speed guy. So I think coming into the SEC, coming to Arkansas is a good opportunity for him to play against some of the best defensive backs in the country. So he'll have a tough test. He's playing Cincinnati to start the year. The Bearcats were a playoff team last year. Kind of sounds crazy to say, but they did lose Ahmad Gardner and several of their key defenders to the NFL draft. So this unit will be good, but they won't be as good as they were a year before. And I see Hazelwood introducing himself to the SEC rather quickly. I think that, he's just a guy who can go up and get it. So I have a lot of faith in him week 1.
Yeah. Hazelwood definitely has some big shoes to fill there for the receiving core of losing Treylon Burks to the Tennessee Titans. So Arkansas, offense has some big shoes to fill, but with KJ Jefferson there throwing the rock to Hazelwood, that's definitely a 1-2 punch that we'll see. And I don't think that Hazelwood, this won't be his last appearance in SEC fantasy. I could see him being drafted. And speaking of a guy who's been drafted a lot, you drafted Cedric Tillman a lot, and I think that he had like 200-yard receiving for like 2 straight games. So
we found out about him late.
Yeah. I'm going to roll with him in game 1 and trust his instincts here. They do have a tough road trip to Pittsburgh next week, so I want to get him before that. So I'm going to go with Cedric Tillman. Going to ride with the 2 heavy horses in the Tennessee offense of Cedric Tillman and Jabari Small. But, I mean, we just can't get enough of Cedric Tillman in SEC fantasy. He's one of the best receivers in the SEC. He's definitely made a name for himself. So he's definitely going to put up big numbers and can even be a dark horse for SEC Player of the Year. All right, let's go on to the defensive front. So these look like safe picks to me, but you never know what can happen. But you're going to go with the Alabama Crimson Tide defense as they face Utah State this week.
Right. And at this point in the season, you can really just pick a team that's playing a weaker opponent. As we get into the SEC season, it gets really tricky because you have to determine, hey, who's going to pitch a shutout this week or limit the yardage. And then you got to look ahead to the next week, and make sure that you're not setting yourself up for disappointment. So, but this early on, you can just purely go after two of the best defenses, as we did here. And, of course, we can't use them next week, but someone else will have, an easy matchup as well. So I look for both of these teams to be up early in their games, but, with it being off yardage, their opponents might get some points late in the game, have some sustained drives, and, kind of skew the total a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. They do face a very tough opponent. Sam Houston State went undefeated last year before losing to Montana State in the FCS playoffs. But Texas A&M, their defense is going to be their focal point of this team. Offense has a little bit of concerns, especially with a quarterback, and they're replacing a top running back of Isaiah Spiller. But I'm going to get them now. And like you mentioned, defenses, whenever we get into SEC play, you really got to look at that rule that we have implemented where you can't, pick Alabama back-to-back weeks. I had 1 week where I was forced to pick Vanderbilt's defense, and they get, I think it was UConn. It was the UConn game I picked them. They gave up 500 yards, and I got negative 200 points for the week. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Hopefully we get off to a hot start here for SEC fantasy and we both end up in the positives. All right, let's recap the only game that we had in week 0 in the Southeastern Conference, and that was the Vanderbilt Commodores traveling to the Hawaiian Isles and Honolulu. Blue skies and great weather there for Hawaii. You really never bet against Hawaii, but man, Vanderbilt came out here and absolutely dominated this. And the player of the game for me on the offensive side is the quarterback, Mike Wright. You see there at the bottom of your screen. He went 13 for 21, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But that wasn't it for him. He had 13 carries, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, if you were actually playing fantasy football, if it was college, this would have been a 30-point game for him, maybe even more. 4 total touchdowns, and I was really impressed with this Vanderbilt offense. I think that many people were sleeping on this Vanderbilt team. They weren't that great last year, losing to East Tennessee State by 20, barely beating UConn by a field goal, but putting up 63 points. It's been a long time since I've seen that number on the Vanderbilt side. But you really got to – I know it's only game 1. Got to hold the brakes here, but Clark Lee and staff really has to be happy with what's going on in Nashville.
Yeah, college football is all about momentum, and getting guys to buy into your program and into the season. So what a good job here by Vanderbilt to just get off on the right start, and just completely dominate on the road and get a good vacation out of it as well. So this is the kind of effort that you really want to see for, all SEC teams when they're playing an out-of-conference opponent. So it's really encouraging to see Vanderbilt join the bunch and take care of business in a big way. I mean, I think they were 7-point favorites in this one. So to win by 53 is just phenomenal. So, maybe we're a little bit low on Vanderbilt in our preseason predictions, but we'll have to see how that translates, this week. And then once they get into SEC play here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, they will return home this week. And, hey, they might, not be last place in the SEC East. That might have to be Missouri. We'll have to see, what Missouri does this week against really a familiar foe. Before we leave this, a defensive player for me for Vanderbilt was Maxwell Worship, the safety. He had 7 total tackles, and 7 of them being solo. You really don't see that happening often. He had 1 pass deflection. Vanderbilt also's defense, you got to give credit to them. This was a defense last year that gave up 31 points to UConn, 23 points to East Tennessee State, and then every SEC team pretty much blew them out the water. But I know that Hawaii isn't, the greatest team. They're probably going to be at the bottom of the Mountain West Conference. You could see likes of Air Force. But getting, this is a Vanderbilt team, like I said, was just barely sneaking by or losing to these type of opponents. But just to start off the 2022 season, beating this opponent, as they should, is a really good sign for the Vanderbilt fans going forward. All right, so we will go on with week 0 on to week 1 games and pick them. And this segment is presented by Norse Beards. If you want to get your beard looking sharp for this upcoming college football season, you can head on over to www.norsebeards.com and use promo code OCS for 25% of all your Beardsman products. You can get it looking like that guy on that logo. All right. So let's go on to the week 1 games and pick them here. And the first one we have is the Thursday night games. We have 2 SEC teams kicking it off on Thursday night. So we have Ball State at Tennessee. For games like this is pretty much going to be a quick pick 'em. So who you got between the MAC and the SEC? We have a couple of those this weekend.
Well, I got to say I really like the return to Thursday night for the SEC. It's fun for opening week when the guys aren't tired and in between games. So that'll be fun to maybe catch a glimpse of tomorrow. But I don't see Tennessee having any issues. We're pretty high on them this year.
Well, Vegas is also hinting at that. They're opening up as a 36-point favorite. So I'll be sure to do that as well. I know that we have some betting fans who love to bet their money on college football. So the SEC is definitely the hardest one. I agree with you. I think that Tennessee is going to come out of the gates hot here. I just think that this offense is just going to be too much for Ball State's defense to really handle. And then the Tennessee defense, this is going to be their tune-up. This is a Tennessee defense, at the end of the season really picked it up. But they had a bad taste in their mouth in that last game against Purdue, giving up 48 points to them. So I think that Tennessee's defense is going to be motivated to come out here against a Ball State offense, that put up points in the MAC. So I'm going to go with Tennessee here. Jets going to agree with us as well. So all Rocky Top throughout the board. Then we'll go on to the next Thursday night game. This is the second of 2 for the SEC. It's between Louisiana Tech at Missouri. Now, this is a Louisiana Tech team that went 3-9 last season. So this is a team that's looking to bounce back. Missouri, on the other hand, no Tyler Beatty, no Connor Bazelak. So this is going to be a new brand offense for Missouri. So do you have the Missouri Tigers opening up the 2022 season 1-0?
I kind of hesitated on this game at first because Louisiana Tech is usually a pretty respectable program, but I did see, they had a down year last year. I would say that's pretty uncharacteristic for them as a program. So I think they kind of get back to their winning ways and make this a little bit of a game. I saw the line was over 20 points, or it was at one point. So for betting, I might be saying Louisiana Tech could cover this, but as far as just a straight up pick 'em, I do think that Missouri will come out victorious. But Louisiana Tech might come in with some tricks up their sleeve.
Yeah, I would not bet on Missouri covering this one. I just think that the offense just has too many question marks coming in this one. Missouri probably gets into the low 30s, and then Louisiana Tech probably gets like 14 points or something like that. But I'm still going to go with the Missouri Tigers based off of talent because on paper, Missouri is just more talented of a team. Louisiana Tech will be coming in here, to ruin, Missouri's home opener. To get off to a hot start. Like I just mentioned, Louisiana Tech looking to just wipe away a really bad and very uncharacteristic. Like you said, Louisiana Tech is always at the top of the Conference USA. Wasn't the case. They were at the bottom last year. But I'm going to roll Missouri at home, and so is our upset specialist. He's going to roll the Missouri Tigers. So consistent picks all throughout. That's really not surprising. Week 1 is always consistent. We'll see if it continues. We have Sam Houston State traveling to College Station to face the number 6 Texas A&M Aggies. Texas A&M, once again, number 1 recruiting class. A lot of hype around Jimbo Fisher in this program. They did name their starter. Haynes King will be starting for Texas A&M going forward. Max Johnson didn't get the start. Sam Houston State, like I mentioned, this was a team that went undefeated in the regular season before losing in I believe it was the second round of the FCS playoffs. So do you have Texas A&M handling their business, or do you have an upset brewing in College Station?
Well, Sam Houston State definitely is no slouch. Very, very good team at their own level of college football. But, if Texas A&M is going to be a top 10 team in the preseason, they need to win this game by 30 points. And I think they can do that. No problem. I think the defense will carry. I think the offense will do just enough to, keep King in the clubhouse leaderboard at quarterback. I think Texas A&M, I think they'll probably win this game like 38-10 or 31-7 or something like that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Houston State, after the first quarter, if it's like a 7-3 ball game, I was like, whoa, it's Texas A&M, an upset alert. I'm going to be slow your breaks down. Texas A&M will win this game. I would have to say like 38-10, like you said, 41-10, something like that. Texas A&M's defense is just going to be too much for Sam Houston State's offense. Sam Houston State is a talented bunch, but at home with the 12th man, I'm going Texas A&M. And we don't call him the upset specialist for nothing. This is his first upset. This is would be a monumental upset to start the year.
He said he heard some office chatter in support of the Sam Houston State Bearcats.
Close enough. Right. I mean, yeah, he's only an hour drive from Huntsville, Texas. So the boys in his office knows what they're talking about. So yeah, like I said, if this happens, I mean, Texas A&M fans are just going to be going after Jimbo Fisher immediately. But I don't see that happening. So we have 2 Texas A&M and 1 Sam Houston State. So that is our first difference in the show. All right, this is going to be our Southeast Sports Talk game of the week here in the SEC. It's 11th ranked Oregon. You might as well say at Georgia because this game is in Atlanta. So this is going to be like 100% Georgia fans and 0% Oregon fans. They might have a couple, but Georgia fans are just going to be too much. So Bo Nix faces Georgia once again. So do you have Oregon pulling off an upset, or do you have the reigning national champs starting off 1-0?
I think Oregon can travel and make this a ball game kind of early on. I think they're still a year or two away from being, a conference championship level team. And Georgia's got all the momentum in the world. They're playing 30 minutes from their home campus. So, yeah, I think Georgia wins this game pretty handily at the end, but I think Oregon could hang in there. They could get some momentum scoring first, coming up with a big stop on defense on Georgia's first drive. But after that, I think Georgia will kind of run away with this one. I think it'll be, Georgia will probably get into the 30s, and it'll probably be like 31-17.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon has been in this same position. Like, no one is giving them a shot. If you go back to last year, their second game of the regular season that they traveled to Columbus, Ohio to face Ohio State. No one gave them a chance in that game. I get it that Kayvon Thibodeau, a lot of key pieces on both sides of the ball aren't there anymore. But I just don't see this one being close, honestly. Georgia, I know that they lost a lot of guys to the NFL draft last year, especially on the defensive side. Trayvon Walker, Nakobe Dean is gone as well. But I'm just going to go with Georgia. This is pretty much like a home game. So Georgia really does well in that environment. And I just think that Stetson Bennett is due for another big year. He showed us what he can do in big games last year, especially in the national championship game against Alabama. But whoever the starting quarterback is going to be for Oregon, whether it's Bo Nix, we haven't really heard from Dan Lanning on that side. It's pretty much just going to be
It's got to be Bo, I would think.
It's got to be Bo. Bo Nix has experience against this Georgia defense. Now, those games didn't go well for Bo Nix, but having any experience against the SEC defense, you just got to go with him. So if I were Dan Lanning, I would probably go with Nix, but whoever they go with won't really matter. I just think that Georgia just has too much talent on both sides of the ball, and Oregon's defense won't be able to shut down Georgia's running game. So I'm going to go with the Dogs, and so will Chet. We're all barking with the Dogs here in Atlanta. So we will go on to the next game, which is another top 25 matchup here in the SEC, and it's number 23 Cincinnati. Like Wade hinted, this was a playoff team last year, but they do lose a lot, especially on the offensive side with Desmond Ridder, Alec Pierce, the notable guys not being there for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And Arkansas is pretty much the opposite. They did lose Treylon Burks and Treylon Smith, but they did add Hazelwood into the mix, and you still have KJ Jefferson, which pretty much reminds me of Cam Newton Jr. At Arkansas. So this is going to be a very highly anticipated matchup here. You have a group of 5 team going on the road to a hostile environment in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So do you have the Hogs pulling this out, or do you see the Bearcats, ruining the party here?
Well, I think Cincinnati can hang in here, and this will be a close ball game. I think it'll be a little bit lower scoring than you would expect with this high-powered Arkansas offense. Luke Fickell is still a very, very much so a defensive genius and a good recruiter as well. So Cincinnati's going to have talent. It might not be NFL talent, but it should be enough, to kind of spook Arkansas here in week 1 while they're still trying to establish their team as well. So I think this game being in Arkansas helps. I think that, if this was a neutral site game or if Arkansas had a weird road game up in Cincinnati, I may be inclined to kind of go for the upset, but I do think Arkansas gets it done. I think they win probably in the range of 3 to 10 points.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a defensive battle here, even with the losses of Cincinnati on Mount Garner. But Arkansas, Bumper Poole's coming back. He's going to be a guy in the SEC. They did lose some transfer corners to LSU, but this Arkansas defense, I believe, is just going to be one of the best in the SEC. But I do have Arkansas and the home team in this one. I just don't know if Cincinnati will be able to score against Arkansas's defense. I have more faith in KJ Jefferson scoring against Cincinnati. I just have a feeling like this has all the feeling, even though that Texas versus Arkansas game last year, Texas was coming in here hyped up, and then Arkansas just slams the door on them. I think that, the line sits at 6.5 right now. I think Arkansas wins this one at least by double digits. I just don't see it with Cincinnati this year. They just lost too much, and this is game number 1, so I think that they're going to struggle. Arkansas, they're a veteran team. They've been in this spot before, so I'm going to go with the Hogs here. So Woo Pig Soo in week 1 for me, and Chet's going to go with Arkansas as well. So we are staying consistent here among our 3 analysts. So next, let's travel to Oxford, Mississippi. Troy at number 21, Ole Miss. Ole Miss is bringing in a new face at quarterback here with Jackson Dart, the USC transfer. So we will see a new look offense for Ole Miss. And Troy was in the middle of the pack there in the Sun Belt, but the Sun Belt is one of the best Group of 5 conferences out there. So you have Troy pulling off another upset like they usually do, or do you have Ole Miss surviving?
Hey, Troy's kind of a team that you never really want on your schedule.
No.
I remember going to South Carolina games as a kid, and they played Troy, and they would come in and give them a fight. And then when we were at LSU, Troy pulled off the unthinkable and beat LSU in Death Valley. Granted, it was kind of a down year, and LSU recovered. But the last thing you need if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss is to have a doozy of a game against Troy in your home opener, season opener. So they need to be on high alert. But I do see Ole Miss winning this one just purely off talent, especially on that offense.
Yeah, you definitely have to be on high alert when Troy comes into town. But I think that Ole Miss is going to get the job done. I just think that the offensive weapons that they bring back on this offense will definitely help them. And their defense, they have experience there. I mean, they pretty much returned all their defensive starters from last year. And I mean, it was an improved defense. I mean, they shut down some of the top SEC offenses in the league. So I think that Ole Miss is going to get off to a hot start. I don't see a trap game here. I think that they'll be ready for Troy. I know that Lane Kiffin takes every opponent seriously. So give me the Rebels in this one. I think they definitely cover. I think that's a 3-score touchdown here. So I'm going to go Ole Miss. And Chet's going to go with Ole Miss as well. That's surprising. He usually doesn't pick.
He usually picks against the Rebels.
Yeah, he usually picks against the Mississippi schools, but we don't see it here in week 1. So next, let's go to a very interesting game. Number 7, Utah. This is a team that a lot of people are talking about in the Pac-12, along with USC being the favorite in that conference and potentially being in the college football playoff at the end of the season, especially if they could win this game at Florida. And Florida is one of those teams in the SEC that hired a new coach in the offseason, Billy Napier, coming from Louisiana Lafayette. So this is going to be a new look Florida Gator offense and defense. On the offensive side, you do return Anthony Richardson. Emory Jones did transfer out, so this is Anthony Richardson's show. You do lose Damian Pierce, the running back, but you still have wide receiver weapons there. And the defense is definitely a concern heading into the season. Florida's defense hasn't been the same the past couple of years, so that's a bit of concern to me for a Utah offense that has one of the best quarterbacks in the nation of Cameron Rising. So are you going with the SEC here, or are you going to roll with the Utes out of the Pac-12?
I think Utah has the talent to come into the swamp and get it done. I mean, it's a long trip. It's a different climate. But, I think they're catching Florida at the right time. I think this Gator team will have ups and downs this season. I think it's asking a lot to get a young bunch ready to go week 1 against a top 10 opponent, even though it is at home, and that helps, and it will be very hot and humid. I think talent prevails here, and Utah gets it done.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think, like you mentioned, you brought it up. This is a climate change. I mean, you're going from the Utah weather where it's like 70
High and
degrees,
dry, baby.
yeah, to the Florida heat where it's probably going to feel into the triple digits, get up to 100. We'll see if there's rain in the forecast because I feel like it always rains when you go to Florida. But I think that Utah, like you mentioned, they're getting Florida at the right spot here. Maybe a couple of years ago, I would have picked Florida at home, but I just think that it's too young of a team. I mean, if you look at Utah, they're one of the most experienced teams. They have experience in big games, especially last year when they played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So, I mean, that's the last game that we saw Utah, and that's what I'm pretty much using for this pick. I think that Utah, I know that they're like a 3-point favorite. I could see this one being close, but I think that Utah wins this one by 10 points. I think it's like a 31-14 type of ball game. I just don't think that Florida's offense, yeah, they have Anthony Richardson, but I think that Utah has one of the more, explosive quarterback duos in the country. So I think that I could see a Florida upset. I would not be shocked at all, but I just think that, like you mentioned, just talent is just too much for Florida to handle. So Chet's going to agree with us once
I'm
again.
surprised Chet didn't go with the Gators.
Yeah, I know. I thought that this would be like the prime upset pick for upset.
Yeah, get the season kicked off the right way.
Yes, but we will have to see. But we will continue our week 1 slate here in the SEC. Miami of Ohio. You'll see Miami coming up here on the Southeast Sports Talk whenever Texas A&M hosts them in a couple of weeks. But Miami of Ohio travels to number 20 Kentucky. And like we mentioned, Chris Rodriguez will not be the starting running back. It will be Smoke. And then Will Levis is coming back for another season at Kentucky, and the defense looks revamped. Kentucky, I know you love and rave about this team. So why don't you take it away here? Do you have the Wildcats winner? Do you have Miami of Ohio pulling off an upset?
Well, as I said in the season preview, yeah, I'm pretty high on Kentucky. I think that Kentucky is very similar to Tennessee. They're bringing back a veteran quarterback who has NFL aspirations, should be a top 5 quarterback in the conference, if not a top 3. But I think the out-of-conference schedule is a little easier for Kentucky, and I think they have some key games lining up at home, such as the Georgia game, whereas Tennessee has to go on the road. So I view both in a very high light, and I think that Kentucky proves me right and gets off to a good start. Miami of Ohio, they made the conference championship game just a season ago with a lot of these guys. But I do think that Kentucky will win. It's a bummer that, Cavazier Smoke has to fill in for Chris Rodriguez. Probably, I guess it means Rodriguez has to pick up the pace in his other games if he wants to be the league's rushing leader. I think he won that distinction last year or got second to Tyler Beatty. But I think that just the system alone is enough to let Kentucky win this game between Levis and Smoke.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with Kentucky as well. This is a pretty easy pick for me. Miami of Ohio, don't get me wrong, is a very talented team. Like I mentioned, they made it all the way to the MAC championship last year, had a very good season. I think that Miami of Ohio will be right back into the MAC mix, but I don't see it here. Kentucky on offense is just too good. And then, like I mentioned, like I didn't mention, they also lost Wan'Dale Robinson. That was one of their most explosive receivers that came into this program. So that's going to be big shoes to fill there. So Kentucky, this is a good way to start the season. I hate to call it a tune-up game because, Miami of Ohio isn't no slouch. But to get an offense, that has to pick up the pieces of a guy like Robinson last year. This is a great way to start it, and this is going to be, I think, a Mark Stoops season again that they could get 9 and 10 win season once again. So Chet is also going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats. So we're rolling with Big Blue Nation here. So we'll move on to the next game is Mercer at Auburn, and Mercer actually played in Week 0. They beat Morehead State 63-13. So Auburn better
offense.
Yeah, Auburn better watch out. This Mercer team, I'm looking at the stats right now of Mercer, and their quarterback didn't really do much, had 95 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. most of their offense came from their running back and then their receivers. So Auburn's defense is definitely going to have a challenge of this Mercer team that can put up points. And Mercer's defense also really had a good showing in week 0 against Morehead State. Now, Morehead State versus Auburn is a completely different story, but still putting up 63 points like a team like Mercer is a very good start to their season. But going on to Auburn's side, we know what happened in the offseason with Brian Harsin, and then the athletic director for Auburn left before the football season. We do know who is going to be the quarterback for Auburn. That's going to be TJ Finley. No Zach Calzada. That's a bit surprising to me. I thought that once Calzada transferred from Texas A&M to Auburn, it would pretty much be a given. But they're rolling with TJ Finley. They must see something that we're not seeing with him. But this is an Auburn team that's looking to get back on track. This is going to be a tough season for them. Pretty much, this is going to be Brian Harsin's already on the hot seat and probably already out the door, in my opinion. So do you have Auburn getting off to a hot start against Mercer? They definitely need to, especially with Penn State coming to their house in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think they get off to the right start with a win this week. But, I think it remains to be seen how this Auburn team will be throughout the season. I mean, I think Calzada could win the job eventually. I think he was kind of hampered by some injuries, and the team kind of had to turn to TJ Finley as, by default. So Calzada could come into the fold and maybe turn things around for this offense. But from what we've seen so far, it just kind of looks like a flat, not overly impressive team. I think Auburn, at best is looking maybe 7-5 this year. Could be a little bit higher ceiling if they can pull off an upset against Penn State. But let's see how they come out firing this weekend. I think they'll win. I think they'll win pretty handedly, but we'll know a lot more in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I expect them to win pretty handily. It's going to be interesting to see the focus of this team, especially just what happened after the offseason, just around their program. They do return one of the best running backs in Tank Bigsby. He's back, so that will
can't forget about him.
Yeah, that'll definitely be huge. He'll be the bell cow for Auburn. I expect this Auburn team to rely more on him this season. They just were behind in so many games that they had to throw the ball. I expect them to, to really establish that running game early on and use this game to implement that when the schedule gets really tougher. But I think that Auburn, Mercer, we saw it put up 63 points in the first week. I don't think they do that. I think that Auburn pretty much wins this one pretty handily. And Chet's going to agree with us once again. He's going to go with the Auburn Tigers. So we're going to move on now to Nashville, where Elon will travel to Vanderbilt, who we just mentioned earlier in the show. They were winners in week 0, 63-10 against Hawaii. So this would be a pretty easy pick for me and you. So who are you going with? Are you going with Vanderbilt, or are you going with a shocking upset of Elon?
I just got to say, this sounds like a matchup you would see at a tech convention, or like
Elon Musk at Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
and no, we have no factual evidence that Elon Musk has full advantage of Elon. So,
but it just sounds like some sort of collegiate competition other than football. Yeah. But on the gridiron, I do think Vanderbilt gets it done. They ride that momentum. I would have picked them to win this game regardless of what happened last week, but I definitely feel a little bit more momentum in the Vanderbilt program. And, if those guys can get off to a 2-0 start, it makes it a little bit easier going into your conference games, having a few wins in your pocket, and makes a bowl game that much more manageable. So I look for Vanderbilt to build on their success from week 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this momentum will continue. If they can score 63 points against Hawaii, I think they scored 70 on this Elon team. I don't think Elon is a very good football team. And it would be huge for Vanderbilt to get to 2-0 because you do host a top 25 team in Wake Forest. So if Vanderbilt, can create some momentum going into that game, there's Wake Forest is without Sam Hartman this season. So that's looking more like a winnable game if you're a Vanderbilt fan. So if this Vanderbilt team, could be an undefeated team before they play Alabama, you do host Wake Forest, and with the week after that, you travel to Northern Illinois. So I would not be shocked at all if we see, an undefeated Vanderbilt maybe even sneak into the top 25 to face Alabama. So I do think that they do start 2-0 though and get an easy win here against Elon. Chet's going to go with the Commodores as well. So this is we don't ever see this on this show.
3 Vanderbilts.
Yeah, I have not seen that on the show. But
we do see this one often, though.
Yeah.
Number 1, Alabama.
Utah State traveling to Tuscaloosa. Utah State did see action in week 0. They did beat UConn.
Barely,
but this is no UConn. Alabama is definitely a tier up. So this should be a pretty easy pick. Just put up 3 A's. Let's move on. I mean, this is A, like you'll see.
I did watch Utah State a little bit last week, though, and they were losing to UConn after a quarter, like 14-0, and then I quit watching it and went back and saw that they had won by 10. But yeah, you're not going to have time to be down 14-0 and rally against Alabama. I mean, it's going to turn ugly quick. I think that Alabama, they cruise to like a 56-3 victory here.
Yeah, I think they're going to be down 14-0 after Alabama's first two offensive possessions. Yeah, I watched Utah State, and they did not look good. They did get the win, but it was just a very sloppy game.
The ball was on the turf a lot.
Yeah, you just can't be sloppy. You can't really have any turnovers against an Alabama team that really makes you pay for those mistakes. But, yeah, I have Alabama really cruising to a win here. So we'll go on to the next pick there. We'll go on to –
You got a little preview.
Yeah, a little preview there. So Memphis at Mississippi State. We did see this game last year in Memphis. Mississippi State fans sure know what happened last year. A controversial call on the punt return there. So State fans and Mississippi State are looking for revenge. Now, Memphis has a very high explosive offense. Now, this game last year was a defensive battle. So, I mean, this now is game 1. So we'll see if it's a defensive battle like last year or do the offenses thrive. So do you have Mississippi State, getting back what they lost last year against Memphis, or do you have Memphis going 2-0 in back-to-back years?
I think Mississippi State makes up for the previous game. I mean, that game was kind of controversial, and Memphis did really bring their A game and played solid football. But, this one's in Starkville. You're going to have the Cowbells. You got a couple of years with Mike Leach, here. He's no longer the new guy. We've accepted the air raid is a thing in SEC football. And, they can really let it fly with Will Rogers. And I think he does just that. I think we'll see a little bit more offense this year. I think it'll be close, but I will give Mississippi State the win. I think they take this one 31-24.
I think I was thinking the same score as well. So great minds think alike. I do think that Will Rogers will get off to a hot start on this one. He could be up for SEC Player of the Year along with Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and Stetson Bennett at the end of the year. Not really many people are talking about Will Rogers. He kind of gets put in the backside with Bryce Young getting all the hype. But I think that Mississippi State has been circling this game for what happened last year. I don't think that Memphis is going to be able to handle the environment of the Cowbells. Their ears are going to be ringing for 3 hours or 3 hours or more. But I'm going to go with Mississippi State in this one. Like you said, I'm going to pick them to win as well, 31-24. And Chet's going to go 2-0 here with the –
He's playing Homer.
Yeah, he's going Homer here with the Mississippi schools, picking Mississippi State at Ole Miss. That rarely happens on the show, so – our viewers
Maybe he's a changed man.
Yeah, you might be a changed man, but not changed from that same Houston State upset pick.
Yeah, he went. Well, that's his new home team, I guess.
So now we go on to Wade's hometown team of hosting Georgia State at South Carolina. This will be the first look for Gamecock fans at their new Sandstorm show that's going to be happening this season.
Looks pretty cool.
The lights and the entrance music. So
a new,
it's definitely going to be
a new rooster, a new Gamecock.
The general that he's called this year. Georgia State, though, this is going to be a sneaky team coming into Columbia, South Carolina here. Now, Georgia State last year faced an SEC school, Auburn. As you remember, last year, Georgia State had that game before TJ Finley comes in and beats the hero for Auburn, and Auburn escapes. So Georgia State was one of those teams that were at the top and competing for the Sun Belt before App State and Louisiana pretty much ran away with that conference. But do you have South Carolina getting off to a hot start here with the Beamer Ball in year 2?
I do. I think South Carolina will win this game. I think it will be kind of low scoring early, maybe tied or maybe even trailing after a quarter. But then I think Rattler will really get it going, and South Carolina will turn it on. And I think they'll get a much needed victory against Georgia State. They have a very tough slate of games ahead of them. They get to play on the road against Arkansas and then get a home date against Georgia. So they really need to get in the win column this week and get off on a good foot. So I think they'll do that. I think it will be, I don't know. I don't want to overly commit to Rattler scoring a ton of points. So I'll give South Carolina a 34 to we'll go 34 to 13 South Carolina victory.
Well, he's on your SEC fantasy team, so you better have faith in Mr.
I think he'll
Rattler
get his
putting up some
yardage,
points.
but I think they'll have some drive stall and have to turn to the kicker probably twice.
Yeah, Georgia State, like you mentioned, is going on an SEC tour to start their season. So this is the first stop, Columbia, South Carolina. I do think that South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, is going to really light it up this year. I think that not many people really talked about him just because of his time with Oklahoma. It was so-so, but I think that this year he lights it up with South Carolina. South Carolina's defense really impressed me at the second half of the season. That was a unit that really struggled. But that I look at that Florida game on, they just absolutely dominated opponents and going on to the bowl game as well. So I think that South Carolina's in for a good season this year, and they get it kicked off here against Georgia State. I can see it like your score, like a 37-13 type of ball game whenever the final with triple zeros hitting the scoreboard. But I'm going to go with the home team with South Carolina. And Chet, this is going to be hard for him to pick against Spencer Rattler. He just loves that man. So he's going to go with the Gamecocks as well. So we have one more game here in week 1 slate. It is the battle in New Orleans between Florida State versus LSU. This is 2 neutral site games that will happen in back-to-back years. So this year we have New Orleans, and then next year it will be in Orlando. LSU is another team with a new head coach, Brian Kelly, the long-term Notre Dame coach. He decided to leave after the 2021 season and head down south. To Baton Rouge. A lot of people have been ragging about his fake Southern accent and his funny TikTok dancing, but now it's all business.
See it on the gridiron.
Yeah, now on the gridiron, Florida State matched up with Duquesne. They absolutely blew the doors off of that team 47-7. They had 6 rushing touchdowns in that game. So the line right now is 3 points. And this game also, just reminders, on Sunday night. So this is the only SEC game on Sunday. So we'll have pretty much a couple of games on Thursday, and then have most of the majority on Saturday, and you have this lone game on Sunday night. So who do you have in this one?
Well, I think that it will take LSU a little bit of time to get this offense rolling. I think we'll see a little bit of everybody at quarterback. I think starting off, I think Brian Kelly will turn to the transfer Jaden Daniels. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Nussmeier, get some action as well in this one. So I'm not a huge fan of when coaches do that. I'd rather just pick one guy and go with him, let him get some momentum and rhythm. If Daniels doesn't score on the first drive, I don't think you necessarily need to put Nussmeier in, as a knee-jerk reaction, and vice versa. So once they get rolling and they get some momentum, I think LSU will run away kind of with this game, and then maybe Florida State will kind of make it a game late. But ultimately, I think LSU will take this one. I think it will be 31. I'll give it 31 to 23.
Okay. So you have it being close. I can see it being close as well. LSU, like I said multiple times just on the shows that we have been on, the season opener for LSU is going to be a very big key for Brian Kelly in year number 1. If you go back to last year, that UCLA loss pretty much just blew the doors off and the wheels just fell off for Coach O and LSU. So this is a much needed because like the start of the schedule, really sets up nicely. You do have Southern after this, and then you have Mississippi State in the third game of the year. So I know that's not going to be a tough task, but this could potentially be an undefeated team heading into that Tennessee game if, the cards fall into place. But I do agree with you. I think that Brian Kelly rolls with Jaden Daniels. He brought him in for a reason. I think that reason is to be the starting quarterback for LSU. He just didn't bring him in, to hold a clipboard for 12 games of the season.
Right.
But I think that this LSU defensive line has an advantage against Florida State's offensive line. My question is how LSU's offensive line will handle.
It was
They
an
have some
interesting
talent.
lineup.
They have some talent, but they did lose 5 offensive starters on the line. But I am going to go with LSU. They tend to play well in the Superdome. I think that they get the job done here. LSU fans get to breathe for at least 1 week and be like, all right, we're 1-0. We go on to Southern and have our home opener. I agree with you. I think that this game is going to be a close. I'm going to give LSU the touchdown. Actually, I'm going to give them more. I'm going to go 31-20. I think that LSU's defense makes a statement. I think that Matt House is going to have a good game plan for Travis, Florida State quarterback, because he's a dual threat. But I just have really high expectations for like the LSU defense, B.J. Ojolari, Mason Smith, and all of those guys. And I just think that the secondary will see their first test against this Florida State receiving core that looks like they have some guys as well. But Chet is also going to go with LSU here, so a clean sweep with the Tigers. Hopefully this goes well for us more than it did last year whenever we had a clean sweep and then UCLA shut the door on all LSU fans in week 1. So we're excited for week 1. That will be all that for SEC. So let's dive now in outside of the SEC, and this part of the show is presented by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. You can go to www.righteousfelon.com and use promo code OCSN for 15% off the best beef jerky around. They have all the flavors in the world, anything you can think of. So if you're a fan of beef jerky, I would recommend Righteous Felon Craft Jerky the next time you go there. All right, let's look outside of the SEC. We have 4 games on the slate here. Starting off with the rivalry game that I'm excited that's back. The last time we saw this game was in 2007. And college football fans know that year as a crazy year in West Virginia.
Quite the season.
Yeah, West Virginia, that Pittsburgh game pretty much set off the dominoes for LSU and Ohio State to be in the BCS National Championship that year. I'm very excited for this quarterback matchup. It's the battle of the former Trojans is what I'm calling this game. Yeah,
2 guys that don't know what they're getting into here in the backyard brawl.
Absolutely. We have Keaton Slovis versus JT Daniels, and we saw on social media Keaton Slovis already trashing West Virginia and how he already hates them. And then West Virginia is showing off some new uniforms with the Country Roads uniforms that look very clean. So I expect this one, honestly, to be a high-scoring matchup. These are very 2 talented offenses. Defenses are going to be okay for them. I think that they'll be able to still to hold serve here, but are you going to go with the Mountaineers or are you going to go with Pittsburgh?
I am. Country Roads, Ooh. Take me home.
All right.
So I know this is a road game in Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh plays in the NFL stadium. It's not like they're going into their literal backyard. I mean, West Virginia will be able to bring some fans into the stadium, and I just think that Pittsburgh's a team that's getting a lot of hype from the carryover of Kenny Pickett in last season. I mean, Slovis couldn't win the job at a very, very bad USC team last year. And now he comes all the way across the country, and you expect them to know all about this rivalry that's being kind of reinvigorated a little bit. I just see this as a recipe for a West Virginia upset. I think that West Virginia is a team that's maybe a little bit underhyped, and it's not that Daniels has done anything wrong at any of the places he's played. There's just been better competition, and Slovis beat him out at USC, and then he comes to Georgia, and the team's hot when Stetson Bennett's playing. So you can't transition to Daniels. So I think he gets his shot and makes a statement week 1.
Yeah, speaking of West Virginia, we see, the Big 12 is a wide open conference. You do have like your top teams with Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Baylor, and then Texas. And then, there's a drop off. But could you see, this West Virginia team, being a dark horse, potentially making a run for the Big 12 championship, excuse me?
Yeah, and it's a defense that's been better than it, historically is. So as long as they can continue on that trend and Daniels sparks the offense, I think they can win some big games. I think they'll go like 8-4. I don't think they'll contend for the conference championship. But it is wide open, We might see a Big 12 winner this year with 2 losses or something. So
Yeah.
I think they'll be in the hunt.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be very scrappy. Both of these teams do not like each other, even though it's been almost over a decade since these two teams met. But I'm going to go with the home team here in Pitt. I don't know if that's just me just still drinking that Kenny Pickett Kool-Aid and just loving that Pittsburgh team last year, but I'm still going to roll with them. But honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if West Virginia comes on the road there. I just think that this Pittsburgh team of Keaton Slovis, they're going to be ready to go this year in ACC. That is definitely winnable. I know all the hype is around NC State and Clemson, but who's going to be that third team? Is it going to be a Miami? Is it going to be a Pittsburgh? Is it going to be a UNC? We don't know, but I think that Pittsburgh gets the job done here and relies heavily on their offense. Chet is also going to agree with me, so I'm pretty
Y'all are
sure
in
you're
the pit.
happy. Yeah, you're pretty sure you're happy to be the lone Mountaineer.
Yeah, I'll
On this pick.
take my chances here. Maybe pick up a game on y'all this week. Chet had a little bit more of an outlandish upset, so we'll see.
Yeah, he might already be starting 0-1 on that slate. So let's go on. So that is a Thursday night game. Now this is another Thursday night game. So tomorrow night we'll see West Virginia and Pitt, and now we'll see the Big Ten facing off. This is a very big game. This is a must-win for both, especially for Penn State in a Big Ten East that has Michigan, Ohio State at the top. I think that Big Ten West is very wide open this year. We'll just have to see if Nebraska can bounce back. But we have Penn State and Purdue. Penn State, notably Sean Clifford coming back. And then Purdue has Aiden O'Connell coming back as well. So a lot of experience at the quarterback position. So are you going? Purdue is also going with the blackout. So that's another big thing. So are you going to go with the Boilermakers or go with Penn State to get a road win here?
Ah, man, there's just something about Purdue, like early season, hosting a team that maybe they shouldn't be able to beat, but just the momentum, and the atmosphere gets them riled up, and I think it translates to a victory for Purdue. Our buddy Matthew Melanson is going to be at that game, so he'll be in black there for the blackout. That should be a very fun experience for him and Mallory. So we'll have to see if we can get y'all an in-person opinion of how this game goes, but yeah, I think Purdue can pull this off. Sorry, Jacob. I think Penn State will be okay this year, but tough draw here week 1.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see some pictures of that crazy environment tomorrow night. I'm going to agree with you. I've been calling my shot on this one of Purdue.
You have emphatically calling Purdue.
Like you just mentioned, like Purdue every year pulls off a big win. I think it comes here in the season opener. I mean, they're acting like this is like the biggest game of the season already, having a blackout. Usually the blackout comes like in the middle of the season or late this season.
Got to get started hot.
Yeah, they got to get started hot here. I think whoever wins this game is going to be set up to compete for their division and ultimately could end up in Indy and the Big Ten championship. But it is going to be a close game. I'm not expecting Purdue to absolutely blow the doors off of Penn State. Penn State's defense is very physical. But I just think that trusting Aiden O'Connell in this situation, I'm going to go with the Boilermakers. And then Chet is going to disagree with us, go with Jacob's Penn State Nittany Lions.
Right.
So we will have to see tomorrow night. I will definitely be tuning into this one. It will definitely be a must watch for all college football fans to see. All right, let's go on to the next game. It is very interesting, and it's also an in-state matchup between number 24 Houston, Chet's hometown team, at traveling to San Antonio, going down the road there to Texas San Antonio. So these are two teams. Texas San Antonio won the Conference USA last year. Is going to be right in the mix along with UAB this year. Houston as well. They'll be competing the American with the likes of Cincinnati and UCF. So, and this all state here with Texas, who you got?
I was a little torn on this one. I kind of trusted the rankings with Houston being a ranked team, but UTSA was really good last year, and I think they finished in the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
I think with just one loss. So UTSA is a team I think could contend for a conference championship this year. These teams will actually be – oh, no, they will not be because Houston is leaving for the Big 12.
Yeah.
So UTSA is kind of their replacement in the American. So a fun little crossover game here. I'm going to go with Houston kind of blindly in this one. Sorry, folks, I didn't really do much of a preview on Houston. Part of me wants to take UTSA at home, but I'll trust the experts and trust the rankings and go with the Cougars.
Yeah, this was a coin flip for me because I'm very high on both of these teams. I have them both winning their respective conferences. This is going to be honestly a high-scoring battle. I think that both of these offenses have a lot of firepower. They do have defense, but I just think that there's too much firepower for that defense to handle. So I'm going to go with Houston in a very close game, but don't be shocked if we see UTSA pull it off here. They are a very good ball club, and if they do, this could be a team that could be in the conversation of being that one group of 5 school that goes to a New Year's Six bowl. I think the winner of this game will be set up drastically for that. So I think that Houston pulls off away here. I think it would be like a 31-28 type of game. It will be close. It's on a tough road game for Houston, but I'm going to go with them. And Chet is going to not go away from his hometown squad of Houston. So we have Houston all throughout. So UTSA fans are probably jumping for joy that we're all not picking their team. And the game of not the year so far, well, the game of the week and the most anticipated matchup of the week is a top 5 matchup. We rarely see a top 5 matchup in week 1. So I'm very excited that we get it. We have 5th ranked Notre Dame at number 2, Ohio State. A lot of hype with this Ohio State team. I think all of us across the board had this team in the college football playoff at the end of the season. Notre Dame, not really a new coach because Marcus Freeman took over in the bowl game against Oklahoma State. So this, the line sits at 17 points for Ohio State. So not many people are believing in Notre Dame, but I believe that they're going to use that to their advantage to do that as motivation. So do you have an upset? This would be honestly a monumental upset for me just because of the point line 17 and just because of the high expectations of Ohio State. So do you see that happening on Saturday night?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to see Notre Dame ranked all the way at number 5. I mean, it makes sense based off of where they last, but this team has a lot of new pieces and they have to kind of, it is not a new coach, but it's new responsibility, right? So he's now in a different city and, he's got to hire new assistants to coach under him. So it will be a little look team. Ohio State is immensely gifted, lots of talent on that offense at receiver and at quarterback, led by CJ Stroud. With it being at Ohio State, I think that gives them an advantage. I know that they lost a big-time game against Oregon last year, but something tells me they won't have. And I think they'll take Notre Dame very seriously, and I think they'll win. I think they'll take this one. I think they'll make a statement. I think they'll win this one by 14 and take this one 34-20.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think that Ohio State makes a statement in this one. I have a lot of hype for this team, so I can't really have them losing to this game, but I'll definitely be tuning in on Saturday night. Notre Dame's going to be coming in here. They do have one of the best tight ends in the country with Matthew Mayer. The defense will definitely have a challenge against a very high-powered offense. You have pretty much a 3-headed monster of C.J. Stroud, the quarterback, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver, and then you have TreVeyon Henderson, the running back. So that could be 3 Heisman candidates right there and 3 first-round picks on that team. So there's a lot of talent on the offense. I think the defense is going to be in question for Ohio State if they can make a run to the Big Ten championship. So this will be the first challenge against the Notre Dame team that likes to run the football up your gut. But I think Ohio State wins this one by at least double digits, maybe even more. I believe they make a statement in the first game. And maybe this vaults them over Alabama in week 1 because Alabama is playing Utah State. So we'll see if the AP poll voters, if Ohio State wins this one like 52-21, I wouldn't be surprised if they jump up Ohio State to number 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the rewards you get for scheduling a big game like this. If you beat Notre Dame and you beat them by, a couple touchdowns, you've proven more than Alabama has. I mean, Alabama's playing Utah State, And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if both of these teams are undefeated. We'll see them in the playoff and they'll get to duke it out. But yeah, I would be in favor of rewarding Ohio State for getting a big win. If Notre Dame wins this game, they should be in contention for the number 1 spot as well, for knocking off the number 2 team.
Yeah, agreed. So Chet is going to also go with Ohio State. No surprises there. Like I mentioned, we have the Buckeyes making it to the Final Four of the playoffs. So no surprises there. So we will go on to our second to last segment here. We pretty much talked about and hinted on all these hot topics, so we won't really spend too much time on it. The first one is Kentucky's top rusher, Chris Rodriguez, is going to be out for Kentucky's opener. I don't think that's really going to hurt Kentucky. They are facing Miami of Ohio. So Smoke should do just fine for them. And then the next hot topic is Brian Kelly has picked LSU's quarterback, but keeping it secret. Do you have Jaden Daniels or Garrett Nussmeier taking the first team reps whenever we see them take the field against Florida State?
I think Daniels will be the guy out there. I think we'll see both play within the first 3 or 4 drives. I think Daniels is the guy.
All right. The next one, Auburn and Texas A&M did name their starters. We mentioned this as well. We also mentioned this on the Sports Scramble podcast, so we don't really have to do a deep dive again on this. So Auburn named TJ Finley their starting quarterback, and then Haynes King will be the Aggies quarterback for Texas A&M. All right, our final segment before we wrap things up here, we will answer all of your questions. We have some of them throughout our Facebook here. So let's see. So let me scroll down here. We have a lot, of course, from our upset specialists. Oh, gosh. The first one is Butte going to toast them FSU corners. They're missing out, boys. So, yeah, what do you think that case, Sean Butte? I'm going to set the over of 2 touchdowns. Do you have him going over 2 touchdowns or under?
I think he'll get under. I think he'll score once. But I think that Florida State will heavily guard him. I actually look for Jack Beck to have the best game out of the LSU guys.
All right.
That or Neighbors. Neighbors might go off.
Yeah. The comments continue to roll from our producer here. The new logo means new team for Vandy. Hey, maybe that was
the
what they needed.
V.
Yeah, just to change their logo. This is a brand new team, putting up 60 points a week. So we will see if that momentum continues. Speaking of the Norse Beers, you got to get that beard looking like Matthew Jones. We saw Matt Jones in our fantasy football draft, had a flushish beard. So definitely check out Norse Beers if you want a beard like Matthew Jones. And then we're going to continue rolling on. Missouri has failed to cover the spread in its past 4 games. So if you're looking for a good bet, take La Tech at 19.5. So
I think that 19.5 is plenty of cushion.
Yeah, it's plenty of cushion to work with. And he adds on to that, cover the spread when the spread is in double digits. All right, we'll continue on. Oh, gosh. So the upset specialist says it himself here. Let's go, Sam Houston. I pay that toll every day. LOL. So maybe all that toll that you pay might result into a Sam Houston State win, but that won't be enough. That Sam Houston State is probably making close to $1 million, maybe even north of $1 million, just facing Texas A&M. And of course, like you said, sprinkle a little money on that Memphis versus State scope. Well, don't know what a scope is, but score is the right term. And, of course, he gives his prediction here, 56-14 LSU. Right. I don't really see that happening. That would be shocking if LSU puts up.
I don't think we'll score 56. I could see us holding them to 14.
We do have one of our shows from the Old City Sports Network agreeing with you here. They think that West Virginia smashes Pittsburgh.
All right.
Tomorrow night.
Hey, that's their territory too, and some of those Philadelphia guys might not be too big on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they're not too thrilled about those boys from Pittsburgh. So we will find out if West Virginia ultimately blows the doors off of Pittsburgh. Definitely be a game to watch. So thank you all for all of your questions. We definitely look forward to answering all of them, even if it's just a statement or a question. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's show. Definitely excited to watch a full weekend of SEC football and football around the nation as the games will kick off tomorrow night. For the SEC fans, it will be Tennessee versus Ball State and Louisiana Tech versus Missouri kicking things off. And then next week, we will also look forward to week 2. So this is pretty much how we'll continue to run things on the show, go from week to week. So hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week and place those bets while you can. Make some money. Go ahead. So we will see you next time here on Southeast Sports Talk. Have a good rest of your night.